Hi everyone, this is Matt Leach with Pioneer Midwest, and I'm here with Ian Ivins, one of our managers at the store, and we are going to give a little bit of an outlook for Fischer skis for the next year, and just a little recap on this last year as well. And I'm going to let Ian talk through the upcoming models for 25, 26.
Yeah, so Fisher is got probably the biggest graphic change out of any of the brands that we have. Well, Atomic does too, but you can kind of see they're going with the teal on the tips. I think they look really nice. So that'll be across the board on all the models. Will look like that for their top end, which is now being called the Speedmax 100. The skate skis will be the 100HE for the Helium model that we're all kind of familiar with. And then on the skate side of things, their next step down will be the Speedmax 90. That's going to be similar to the Speedmax, or the same ski as the Speedmax 3D that we're familiar with. And then the Speedmax 80 will take place of the RCS. So the Carbon Light kind of gets thrown out the window a little bit, but they'll still have that RCS, Speedmax 3D, and then the Helium as the 80, 90, 100 HE respectively. And then on the classic side of things, they have the Speedmax 100 for their top end model. And then the next step down would be the Speedmax 80, which again is taking place of that RCS. The only slightly goofy thing is that their skin ski, their top model, will be the Speedmax 90 twin skin. So that's kind of the entire lineup of those. We're going to dive a little bit more deep into the different models that come within those Speedmax 100s. So new the last couple years we got to actually ski on it a lot more was the cold model with their new 31 base, which we've had a lot of really good luck with, and it's been very consistent. The old A5 base material was very inconsistent and sometimes just not good at all. So
The only time that I used to be sponsored by Fischer from 2010 to 2014, and raced World Cup for those guys, and I did use the A5 base just on skate skis. I had some on classic; they never really worked. But in skate, if I was in the far mountain west, it could work. But that base material was really scabby and callousy, so it would just seal shut kind of quick, and so it was really hard to keep healthy. And so default is just the tried and true 28 Fischer base material, which was the best. And then Fischer kind of knew that A5 base material was pretty limited in its use. So with the Olympics in China, they started testing new base materials on the cold side of things because it was really cold snow, high friction environment there. And that's when they settled on this new cold base, the 231, which they don't have room for 3 digits on the tip, so they print it as a 31 base. And it's very competitive now with the best cold bases in the industry. Like our favorite base material is probably Solomon F base. It's their blue ski, but this is very competitive with that. It grinds really well. It waxes well. When you get to those cold, squeaky friction days, it just feels really, really nice on static release. And they're durable to abuse too, which is like a Fischer standard with the 28 base. It's like you can overheat them and kind of not wax them as much as you should, and they stay kind of healthy and fast. With other brands, not quite the same, where you can't abuse them with the iron, and you can't you dry them out while skiing and just keep skiing. Once you do that with other brands, they really kind of get pitted and seal shut. Fischer, there's a higher tolerance of abuse that they'll keep being fast, so that the new 31 base cold skis have been really well. And that's, I don't bat 1,000 on ski picking. I really try, but there's just some variables that we can't measure, and trying to measure the customer too, like what's their expectation. But I will say, like, all the Helium colds that I sold this year, it was like 100% feedback.
Some of the better feedback we had.
It was just like,
on
these things
any-
are
on any
amazing. Like,
models,
it was like we couldn't miss.
Yeah.
It was like, just that was.
No, they were really running really well, and I think a lot of excited Fischer fans to be able to have a Fischer cold ski.
Yeah, and that exactly, and that and it was real. We've had access to them for the past couple of years, but it was pretty limited. 2 years ago, like really, maybe 3 years ago, maybe like we got to bring in 3 pairs, and 2 years ago maybe a dozen, and then last year was a bit more open.
Yep.
Like we could select a bit more. So
Yep,
last
and had some on the shelf in store.
yeah. Before
even.
those other, it was so there's nothing
Yeah.
on the shelf. Like
Yep.
it was all assigned, and then the list of people that wanted them exceeded what we even were able to get. And last year was the first year we had people in the pick list for them, and then we also had a decent selection for in-season customers to pick from, and we sold through almost all of them, I think.
Yeah.
They were, yeah. And the feedback was really positive on that ski. And that base material probably goes up to mid-20s, I would say.
I would say so in North America for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So.
Yeah, had it running well. Then the next one is going to be the Skate Plus. This is the 610 mold that we're very familiar with from Fischer for a long time. This can work really in a really big range, kind of anywhere. Yeah, so it can work well down into the cold. It's got the plus base on it, so it can work in colder temperatures all the way up to 32 or somewhere in there. We can find them with a little bit more tip and tail splay or a little bit less tip and tail splay, depending on the conditions you're looking for. So a really big range of those skis.
Yeah, and with that plus base, if you add enough start green or hard waxes to it, you can harden up that plus base enough that it'll handle the most bitter cold snow.
Yeah.
If it's humid cold, for sure, it's great.
Yeah.
If it gets really dry, Mountain West, low humidity, kind of static cling, type stuff, then a cold base is going to be a bit better. But if you don't have one and you have kind of a unique cold structure, you can still add enough hard waxes and get that base polished up enough that it's still going to be in the ballpark of workability. And on the warm side of things, the nice thing with the Fischer 28 base is it plays on both sides of freezing really well. So if it's above 32, they're really good in that transition. It starts kind of cold but warms up. And the plus base can even go the full kind of slush, but the 610 is not going to have enough splay for full wet, but it'll get to uni warm. So upper 30s, it's still, I think, very competitive.
Yeah, for sure. And then the next one that we have is the Skate Plus 61K. So this is the variation on the 610 mold, essentially, where they pretty much just change some screws in the mold and make it so that there's purposeful, a little bit more tip and tail splay, kind of opens up so it goes a little bit shorter contact. We really found that, again, that can run in a wide range of conditions. Probably a little bit better, leaning a little bit warmer, a little bit wetter, even a little softer snow.
Yep.
But it's like the 610, we've had it run well in a lot of different conditions.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of customers will read Fischer literature on the 61K, and it's advertised as a soft snow ski. And yes, that's probably the DNA of the ski, but and if you pick it based on the FA for what Fischer says, the wheelbase will be fairly short, and that's good for soft snow. But if there's enough variance in production, and we can kind of overfit that ski a little bit with picking a little bit higher FA value, it's going to lengthen out the wheelbase, and so that's going to introduce a lot of stability to the ski with really good tip and tail splay. So if we find pairs that have really soft and smooth contact in the glide zones with a nice long wheelbase on a 61K, that's kind of a unicorn ski. It can do almost anything. Like it'll handle softer snow, and based on the contact length in the glide zone, we can kind of pick it for softer cold snow and stretch out that glide zone length. Or if we want it for wet corn snow, we can shrink that contact zone up and put a wet grind on it and run it in full slush. So if you want a kind of a uni warm to a wet profile, we're probably going to look at 61Ks. We could find it in 610 because we see a lot of overlap. While I'll see 610s that look like 61Ks and vice versa. But a lot of our customers have been really happy with the 61K, even like on a stability side of things. They're like, oh, these are really stable. Part of that's just how we select skis and how we pick and fit skis. If you just kind of go right down the middle of the fitting literature on what Fischer says, that ski probably does lean a bit on the softer side, but we can kind of push it into a very universal. I've even had people ski that on ice straight, and they're still happy with it. So,
Sure.
Most people like, because that when you have that splay a little bit, it just makes the ski a little more lively and a little bit more acceleratory. So a lot of people just really like the feel of the 61K because they have a better static release than the 610, I would say. Like they feel more acceleratory underfoot, and if you find a good pair of them with a stable wheelbase, they can do everything.
Yeah, for sure. I know I've had with the Helium now being out a couple years, I've had a handful of questions of people asking, because it's so much lighter than that normal Speed Maxes, if it's breaking down quicker, or maybe not feeling as good if you're pushing really hard. And I just kind of wanted to ask you what you've seen from that, or now that he's been out for the last couple years.
We've followed the Helium as it's been introduced to the World Cup now, kind of over the past 4 seasons, and then also our feedback in store. I've got, when I was a Fischer athlete, now this is 10 years ago, like, we didn't have the Helium, and so all my skis were just the traditional Speedmax 3D construction, and so I'm really familiar with that. I've got a 61K 3D that I have personally, but I skied on a lot of the Heliums, and they're just lighter. They have that really light swing weight, like a Solomon S Lab or a Redline, where don't even feel the ski underfoot. And I'm kind of a stockier, bigger guy. I push pretty hard, being a former hockey player, and I've had no issues with that ski. Feeling like there's not enough sustenance there under the foot. So I think it just skis quite close to the 3Ds, I think. They got a little bit of a bad rap initially off the start, because some of our more enlightened master skiers get to hear little trinkets of info from the World Cup, and they're saying, like, oh, on the World Cup, the Helium is only raced 20% of the time. Well, that was year one, when they just weren't making a lot of them. So if Fischer's going to make 80% of the skis in the 3D and 20% Heliums, like, that's what you're going to see on the World Cup. So as the Helium got, because they're harder to produce, and especially when they're making a new product, they're not going to be able to make them as fast and as consistent. So as they've had more experience making those skis and making production, then they're just making them better and better. So as a percentage of what gets used on the World Cup from 3D versus the Helium, we're seeing more and more and more Heliums, and that just keeps climbing. So last year it was probably 50% on the World Cup, if not even more. But we've had Jeremy Hecker has been on the World Cup a lot, helping the U.S. ski team at times, and he's had some Fischer athletes that mostly use the 3Ds, and then he's had other Fischer athletes that are all Heliums all the time. So it really comes down to the flex of the ski, I think, for sure. So we've seen the Helium improve over time. So we've picked him over the past, 4 picking seasons, and the first year was like, second year was like, there's a little bit better, and it just keeps climbing up the ladder of consistency of what they're producing now. And now it's kind of their flagship ski, so they're just putting all of their effort into producing that ski and doing a really good job with it. So it's I'm assuming it's gonna keep taking market share on the World Cup side of things too. It's just gonna be like the go-to ski.
Yeah, and aside from the World Cup at all too, we've just had such great feedback from all our customers on them of how light that ski is. That's been a really big selling point. To just put it on you really start skiing on, and you lift your foot up, and you're kind of like, whoa, like there's like nothing there. So we've had great feedback. So we've gotten a lot more confident in just
and your question on longevity, a lot of people are like, oh, it's a pretty thin core. Is it going to wear out sooner than like a 3D? We haven't seen that yet. Again, I guess we're only seeing skis that are 3 years old, but they're aging, because skis, they lose something every season. So we can quantify and measure that here, but we're not seeing anything die quickly. We've had certain, I won't call anybody out here, but there's certain models within certain brands where 1 or 2 seasons they're already dying,
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, and we've had ski engineers tell us, like, well, that's okay, how often do you buy a new iPhone? They're like, they wear out. Yeah, you can get new ones. But in the Heliums, we've looked at stuff coming back in, and it hasn't really aged. And the wood is thinner on the sidewall, but it's married to a carbon fiber laminate. So carbon fiber, unless it's broken, it's gonna keep its shape. So we've had good feedback on longevity of that ski so far as well.
Yeah. So moving on to classic skis, this is probably one of the bigger changes from Fischer, since a lot of their construction hasn't changed on the skate side of things. The new model is the 702. This one is more or less taking place of the old 812, so that one is not going to be around in the Speedmax 100 variation anymore. The 702 is basically a variation of the 902. The 902 is just such a popular model, and we were really leaning on it for a lot of universal skis that we actually would find some that looked similar to a 702 on purpose for someone with our hard wax type of ski, because we've had such good luck with them. But yeah, we're really excited for that 702. It has a little bit higher breasting camber, a little bit more tip and tail splay than the 812 did. So feeling really good about it compared to that 812 model, which really ran well in really cold, but there's a lot of, when you got up into the warmer temperatures, the 902 is certainly better.
Yeah, so our like, as I squeeze this, you can kind of see the tip and tail splay in the 702. And so when we pick 902s, we're picking pretty universal, trying to pick a very universal ski. So on the bell curve of what they make in 902s, like the 902 is supposed to be their clister ski. So there's really wet over here, and then mostly a lot of clister stuff, and then we're looking for skis down in the 902 that leans more universal or can take hard wax, and that pocket closes uniformly. There's no residual camber in there. So we're looking in a small corner of what's produced in the 902s. Thankfully, Fischer makes tens of thousands of Speedmax, and so they have the largest race production of anyone, and so their bell curve is massive. So even though we're looking down here in the small part of the bell curve, we're still looking at thousands and thousands of skis that are in what we're looking for. So that's the 902, and that's been around for a long time. Then you had the 812, which is really hard wax, like really shallow pocket. Wasn't used on the World Cup much at all. I mean, 902s are probably 90% of the time, 95. When I was sponsored by Fischer Racing World Cups, I never raced on my 812s ever. And at one point in time, I had 43 pairs of race skis from Fischer, and so I had one 902 that I used almost all the time. But all my 902s were really good. All the 812s that I had kicked really well. They were not fast though. Or not that fast. And once I cheated the bindings back to -2, you can kind of open the pocket up and they can kind of go. You're trying to create some artificial splay under the foot, because on a classic ski, you've got splay essentially in 4 zones. You got your tail, you got under the bridge, under the front of the bridge, and then your tip. And so 812s would just have really limited splay, tip and tail. And then under the bridge too, there was not much splay. So cheating the binding back a little bit is going to create some artificial splay under the foot to kind of allow a little stickier dry waxes to kind of run. Chris Freeman told me that, when I was skiing around with him, I think I was on my 812s, and I'm like, these things are always never fast. And he's like, look down, he's like, oh, you got them at 0. You got to ski that at -2, like no matter what. So I did that. It helps a lot. So a lot of our customers that we put 812s on, we're putting the bindings back on -1, -2. It's a very traction-oriented ski.
Yeah.
So, but with the 702, they're basically taking that corner of the 902s that we were shopping for, and a lot of places were looking for that, and they've made that a model. And so it's got some splay, tip and tail, and underfoot. So with this, we can probably find 702s that, when we've seen some early production, what we've seen looked really good. And so, and I've skied on it too and really like it. Has more acceleration than the 812. It'll carry some amount of clister too, so it's a great kind of, that might take the place of our kind of, I want a universal classic ski. It might be a 702 instead of that tiny corner of the 902. But we're going to be in Europe and also picking in New Hampshire too, where Fischer USA is based out of. And so we're going to see what they produced, and then we'll have a better idea. But it just, before you had 812 way over here and 902 over here, and we need a lot of skis where they kind of just overlapped a little bit. And now, where we need skis, there's a lot of options. So we're gonna have a lot of optionality. So we're very excited about the 702.
Yeah, for sure. And then the next model obviously is going to be that 902. Those are, and that's the same as it has been. So there's going to be a wide range, and it's going to be that universal to uniform up into clister, for sure. And that's just been, the 702 is the new thing we're very excited about, but the 902 has been so good for so long that we are still gonna.
We'll lean on that ski a lot,
for sure.
Until proven otherwise.
Yeah,
maybe the 702 is gonna take its crown. As the #1 classic race ski in the store. Because right now that's our number one model for classic waxable race skis is the Fischer 902.
For sure.
We can't mess with it essentially. But again, there's a lot of variation in the flex. So if you need a clister ski, we can pick it in that, and if you want a universal, we can kind of pick it a little on the colder side. So It's generally for junior athletes that need one ski to rule them all, that's the ski we put them in.
Yeah.
As the junior kids actually gain weight a little bit, then we kind of take a 902 and grind it a little colder, and that's their hard wax ski, and then pick a new 902 that leans a little more clister. And as master skiers kind of wear out their 902s and the resting camera starts to drop as the skis wear out, again, we push that down into the colder side and just pick a new 902. So that's just kind of a bread and butter classic model for us. But with the 702, we're really excited that we're going to be able to find some excellent skis in that model.
For sure, yeah. And then the last one would be the 902 wet. So again, they kind of just took the 902 and split it into making it 3 different models to make it easier to find and kind of pinpoint exactly what you're looking for. So that 902 wet's going to be more clister focused.
Yep.
So that would be your clister type ski. If you're building the fleet with all 3 of them, you'd kind of have your hard wax, uniform, true clister, which is pretty great that it's going to be a little bit easier to tell, like, oh, I get 3 different models rather than getting 3 902s for 3 different things, which you can absolutely do and probably still can do.
Yeah.
But it'll be a little bit easier for us and also for customers to
Know which
dial
one to
in
use.
which one to use when and which one to look for. But yeah, that again, it's going to lean on that more clister side of the bell curve, and able to ski on it a little bit last year. And yeah, it's great. It's a 902, so just a little better in clister.
Yeah, and we're heading to Fischer International end of May, so maybe 4 weeks away. And so we've been doing a lot of fleet analysis or checking people's skis out. So if you want to come in the store with your skis and get a bill of health, or we've had a lot of people ship skis to us, we can send you a shipping label for $25 to get your ski bag here, and we'll give a bill of health on your skis. And once you know where you're at, then you can make a decision with us on what you might want to add. And then we're doing our spring grind special still too. So now's a great time to kind of start thinking about next year. And we're really excited to. The new graphics I think are really, really sharp looking, and their lineup of models is going to cover everything really well. And Fischer in the past, like, they maybe didn't do the coldest stuff, or they didn't, the 902 was really kind of clister oriented, but with their current model lineup, like, we can pick anything from Fischer now, which is really exciting.
But yeah, so if you do want anything, I'll link our ski request form down below. You can fill that out, or if you have our emails, you can email us, and we'll respond to you and build a plan and get you on the pick list for this upcoming year. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.